In the summer of 1998, a renovation crew entered an abandoned theater in Vietnam. Beneath the center of the stage, they discovered a door that did not appear on any building plan. Behind it was a staircase leading underground, and at the bottom were five missing performers, still dressed in the costumes, sitting silently in a semicircle. In front of them stood one empty chair. Police believed the chamber had been sealed since 1971, but that night, the empty chair moved by itself, and six wet handprints appeared on a wall. There had only been five bodies. To understand who left the sixth handprint, we have to look back to the final performance at the Lotus Theater. The Lotus Theater opened in the late 1960s in a provincial town in southern Vietnam. It was not a grand opera house. It has no marble lobby or famous international performers. But to the people who lived nearby, it was the center of the town after sunset. Families arrived on bicycles, street vendors gathered outside. Inside, several hundred wooden seats faced a deep stage framed by red curtains. Traveling musicians, dramatics companies, and traditional perform troupes stayed for weeks at a time before moving on. For a few years, the theater was almost always full. Then the monsoon season began, exposing its weaknesses. Water entered through the roof, timber swelled and cracked, sections of plaster fell from the ceiling. Performances become less frequent, and the building slowly gained a reputation for being unsafe. After a serious ceiling collapse, the owners finally closed the auditorium. The doors were changed, the lights were disconnected, and the Lotus Theater was left to decay. At least, that was the official story. Over the following years, people living nearby reported lights moving behind the board windows. Some describe a warm glow inside the old ticket booth. Others say the narrow beam travels slowly down the center aisles, as though an usher were guiding an invisible audience to its seat. The reports were easy to dismiss. Teenagers entered the theaters on dares. Homeless people occasionally sheltered from storm inside. Reflections from passing motorbikes could move across the windows. But one detail appeared again and again. Witnesses said that the lights were most often seen during the heavy rain, and that they always disappeared at exactly the same place, the center of the stage. By 1998, the building was scheduled for the renovation's conversion into community hall. The project supervisor was a practical, soft-spoken man named Daniel Tran. Daniel did not believe in haunted buildings. His only concern were cost, safety, and finishing the project before the next major storm. Daniel arrived in a small crew and began studying the original plans. Almost immediately, he noticed something strange. The stage was shown as a solid raised platform. There was no basement, storage cellar, or underground access anywhere beneath it. On the crew's first morning, an elder man appeared at the entrance. His name was Walter. He had worked at the Lotus Theater as a young stagehand and later served as its caretaker. Walter asked Daniel to leave stage untouched. Daniel assumed the old man was being sentimental. He explained that the rotting board had to be removed. Walter did not argue. Instead, he placed a tarnished brass key in Daniel's hand. "If you find a door," he said, "do not open it after dark." Daniel asked what the key unlocked. Walter pointed toward the center of the stage. Then he walked back into the rain. Daniel kept the key, but he did not take the warning seriously. Not yet. For 3 days, the crew removed broken seats, damaged plaster, and waterlogged equipment. Beneath the stage, they found sections of hardwood that looked newer than surrounding timber, but no visible handle or hinge. On the fourth evening, heavy rain delayed their departure. Two workers, Ethan and Michael, remained inside to secure equipment. While crossing the auditorium, Ethan heard a folding seat close behind him, then another. Then 5 seats lowered almost simultaneously near the middle of the room. When Michael raised his flashlight, 5 people appeared to sitting together in the darkness. They did not speak. Their clothing looked old, theatrical, and wet. Michael called out, believing trespassers had entered the building. All 5 figures turned their head toward him at the same time. Ethan ran toward the exit. As Michael followed, he saw a woman standing behind the edge of the stage curtain. She wore a pale blue performance dress and seems to be trying to warn them about something beneath the floor. The men fled into the rain. The next morning, they told Daniel they would not enter the auditorium again. Daniel still believed fear and exhaustion had distorted what they had seen, but the descriptions of 5 seated performers troubled him. Walter had never mentioned performers. Daniel returned to the unusual hardwood section at the center stage. After moving a warped plank, he found concrete beneath the timber. Embedded in it was a metal lock, blackened by age. Walter's brass key fit perfectly. The sealed panel released with a deep mechanical click. When the workers lifted up, cold, damp air rose through the opening. A narrow concrete staircase descended beyond the reach of their flashlights. The structure did not appear on any plan Daniel had examined. He told the crew to remain above while he went down alone. The staircase ended at a heavy door. Beyond it was a rectangular chamber directly beneath the auditorium. Moisture covered the walls, but the room itself appeared undisturbed. 5 wooden chairs had been arranged in a semicircle. Every chair was occupied. The remains belonged to 5 people. Fragments of embroidered fabric still clung to their bodies, suggesting they had been wearing stage costumes when they died. One held a cracked white performance mask. Near the other chairs, Daniel saw a silver hairpin, an instrument tuning tools, a small shoes, and a tarnished brass stage bell. Facing the 5 body was the 6th chair. It was empty. On the floor beneath it lay an old troupe photograph. 6 young performers stood together backstage. 3 women and 3 men. Deep scratches had been cut across the faces of 5 of them. Only one woman in a pale blue dress remained untouched. On the back was a faded date from 1971 and a handwritten warning. Most of the writing could no longer be read, but one short line remained visible. She was supposed to be here. Daniel left the chamber and contacted the police. Investigators sealed the theater and spent several days documenting the chamber. The remains were removed respectfully and sent for examination. The evidence suggests that the victim had not entered the room willingly. Scratches marked inside the metal door. There was no secondary exit and no ventilation large enough for a person to pass through. Police searched all missing person reports and newspaper archives. They identified the 5 victims as members of a traveling performance group that had appeared at the Lotus Theater in 1971. The troupe originally had 6 members. Their dressing room had reportedly been found abandoned after their final scheduled performance. Costumes, instruments, makeups, and personal belongings were still inside. The theater manager at the time claimed that the group had left the town without warning. There had been no evidence contradicting him. Now the architectures told a different story. The chamber had been constructed directly under the auditorium and concealed during the repairs. Whoever sealed it knew the theater immediately. Detectives also confirmed that the 6th performer, the woman whose face had not been scratched from the photograph, was named Evelyn. Unlike others, Evelyn has survived. After the remains were removed, officers left the empty chair inside the chamber while they completed their photographs. The next morning, it was no longer in the center of the room. It had moved several meters and now faced the staircase. Fresh scratches crossed the damp floor behind its legs. No one admitted moving it. The entrance had been locked, and an officer had remained outside throughout the night. Daniel ordered 2 workers to carry the chair upstairs. As they lifted it onto the stage, the disconnected curtain mechanism began turning. The red curtain slowly rose above them. Both men dropped the chair. Then someone noticed 5 wet handprints on the backstage wall. They were arranged side by side, water running from each palm even though the surrounding plaster was dry. As the investigators watched, another handprint appeared behind them. The 6 handprints were smaller than the others. Daniel remembered the woman Ethan and Michael had seen behind the curtain, the woman wearing pale blue. Daniel went to Walter's home and placed the true photographs on his table. The old caretaker immediately recognized it. In 1971, Walter had been a 20-year-old stagehand. He knew the 6 performers and had witnessed a bitter argument between them and the theater manager. The troupe intended to leave after their final show. The manager believed they owed him money and accused them of breaking their agreement. Walter saw the performers enter the backstage corridor that evening, but he never saw 5 of them leave. Years later, the former manager summoned Walter to his bedside and confessed he had lured 5 performers below the stage, promising to discuss their unpaid earning in private. Once they entered the chamber, he locked the door. He intended to capture Evelyn as well, but she has escaped the theater moments before the others went downstairs. The manager gave Walter the brass key and demanded he kept the chamber hidden. Walter obeyed, first out of fear and later out of shame. For 27 years, he carried the key without opening the door. According to Walter, the six performers has become popular enough to receive an offer from a larger theater. Evelyn told the Lotus manager that the troupe would finish its remaining shows and then leave together. The manager refused to release them. He controlled their earnings, their lodging, and much of their transportations. When Evelyn demanded the money they were owed, the confrontation became public. That evening, Evelyn discovered that the manager planned to separate her from the group. Fearing for her safety, she slipped through a side entrance and ran into monsoon rain to find help. The other five were told that Evelyn was already waiting in a storage room beneath the stage. They followed the manager downstairs. After they entered, he closed the metal door. Evelyn returned with two local officials, but the manager insists that the troupe has taken their belongings and left. The hidden entrance has already been covered. Without proof and terrified by threats, Evelyn eventually left the town. The empty sixth chair had been placed in front of her friends because the manager intended her to join them. The five figures sitting in the auditorium were not waiting for performance. They were waiting for Evelyn. After the remains were identified, investigators located Evelyn, now an elderly woman living several provinces away. She returned to Lotus Theater before the demolitions began. Walter gave her the cracked troupe photograph and apologized for being silenced. Evelyn did not answer. She walked alone onto the ruined stage and stood beneath the raised curtain. Several witnesses later claimed that the disconnected stage lights briefly illuminated on the auditorium. Evelyn bowed once toward empty seats. Behind her, five faint figures appeared to join hands. For a few seconds, the original six performers stood together on the Lotus stage for the last time. Then, the lights went out. When they returned, Evelyn was standing alone. The six wet handprints backstage had disappeared. The Lotus Theater was demolished soon afterward. The underground chamber was opened completely, documented, and filled during the redevelopment. Today, an ordinary commercial street reportedly occupied the area where the theater once stood. Nothing visible identified the place where the five performers were hidden for more than 2 decades. Walter never returned to the site, but one object was not recovered after the demolition: the empty sixth chair. Workers remember placing it beside the stage before the excavators arrived. By the sunrise, it was gone. Perhaps someone removed it as a souvenir. Or perhaps, after 27 years, the person it had been waiting for finally took a seat.